So welcome everyone. Welcome to Black and Corporate Executive Coffee Chats. So excited. This is our inaugural episode. So cue applause. I just want to start by briefly introducing myself because you all don't know me. My name is Taylor Tucker. I'm a 26-year-old Chicago native, graduate of North Carolina A&T State University with a BS in industrial engineering and a current management consultant at Deloitte Consulting. I wanted to start this podcast just to shine light on Black leaders in the corporate space and give people a chance to get access to coffee chats they may not be able to set up. So that's just a quick little background on me. I want to transition to welcome our very first guest to the show, which I'm super excited about, Mr. Cordell Hardy, or should I say Dr. Cordell Hardy, who is the Vice President of Corporate Research and Development at the St. Paul, Minnesota-based 3M Corporation, which manufactures industrial, safety, and consumer products. It ranks number 24 in the world's most admired companies and on the list by Fortune, and 103 on the Fortune 500 list. Cordell's story began in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A lover of science and math, he went on to Florida A&M University, where he received his Bachelor of Science degree in chemical engineering. He went on to receive his PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. Cordell also gives back. He sits on the board of directors for the Sine Foundation. Hopefully I'm saying
Sane, yep, that's cool. Close, yeah.
to support holistic development of youth as they matriculate through school. He's also on the advisory board of his alma mater, FAMU FSU College of Engineering, and he's the treasurer of Minnesota Community Care. He's also a loving husband and father of 4. Wow, he truly does it all, and hopefully we can get into that and how he's able to manage it. So let's give a warm welcome to Cordell. Give an applause there.
Thank you, Taylor. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Yay! I'm really happy to have you, so I'm excited.
Yeah. So I'm here. Wherever you want to go, you lead me, and I'll follow, and then I'll offer anything I have. So much
Okay.
obliged. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna get into the show with an icebreaker because I think it's a great way just to get us all kind of loose and ready to chat and get into the harder questions later. So this will be
Sure.
light and
Okay.
and hopefully fun.
Yeah.
Little lightning round. All right, so I'm gonna go through 10 questions.
Okay.
Okay. Quarter zip or hoodie?
Hoodie.
Okay. Iron
Yeah.
or dry clean?
Oh, for sure, dry clean. I hate ironing. I haven't ironed anything in years.
Okay. Soup, salad, or sandwich?
Salad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Morning workout or morning meditation?
I try to do a little bit of both. Yeah. So it's not. I'll get up and spend some time reading and pray, and then try to get a workout in. So I try to do both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Golf or basketball?
Uh, I would normally say basketball, but as you get older, you learn a little bit about joint pain. So I don't play hoops as much anymore, and my knees started to tell me I needed to cut back on that. I like golf, and I'm not good. I don't play a lot, but definitely basketball. Yeah.
Okay. Would you do a thank you email or a thank you note?
I should do a thank you note, but I do a thank you email.
Okay. Laptop or desktop?
I actually use both. The laptop, and then now connected to cloud stuff, that's sufficient. So yeah, laptop.
Okay. Are you an early rise grind or night owl grind person?
Yeah. That's the reality is also a little bit of both. More early though. So as we'll talk about, my job is very global. I'm the only U.S. direct report in my organization of hundreds of people. The closest managed person is in Canada, and we're in dozens of countries. So I actually kind of span the time zones in my role, and do it, much more in the early morning though than in the evening.
Okay. Now, would you do a briefcase or backpack?
Oh, backpack for sure. Yeah, that's right here. So, yep. I
Okay.
have never owned a briefcase, and I am in my 40s. I don't see that happening.
Gotcha. Okay. Nice. And last one, are you an audible person or a physical book type person?
Um, wow, that's a good question. Um, you didn't leave space for digital books, and that's probably where I end up most. I like audiobooks, but I mostly just view and scan. I read pretty quickly, so that's what I normally do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, that
So,
concludes our little icebreaker.
all right.
I think that was 10 questions. So I was trying to keep track. Um,
That's fine. Yeah. Those are easy, like you promised.
okay, good. Okay, good.
Maybe some hard stuff.
Right, right. We'll get into that. Um, so thanks again, Cordell, for joining us. We want to just start, I guess, at the roots.
Sure.
Say. So just a little background on you. Know you're a Philly native.
Yeah, yeah,
Know that you were early lover of you know arithmetic and doing science. You end up having a career chemical engineering. So
yeah.
kind of went in line, but where was that spark when you started? What were kind of the things going on when you were a kid? To
Sure. Yeah, yeah. No, happy to share about that. And if my mom, or when my mom listens to this, I'm sure she'll enjoy hearing. I attribute a lot of my professional, intellectual, and leadership success to, those formative years where my mom had a huge influence on me. So neither of my parents has a technical background, and my full sister is the first African American PhD female out of MIT in mechanical engineering. And of course, as you mentioned, did a PhD at University of Minnesota in chemical engineering. And to my knowledge, I was the second blackface to go through that department in chemical engineering. The first being decades earlier. So there was something unusual about how my parents raised us, especially given that they hadn't tread that ground before. And one of the big things that my mom did is she taught us to read early, and she kept us away from screens um, pretty meticulously early on in our life. And instead, I had blocks. I was playing chess at an early age. She helped us with problem solving, and so she fostered this sort of creative mindset, and also confidence that even if you haven't done it before, you can try and you're competent. I mean, the fact that you're small or younger doesn't mean you can't do it. It just might mean you have to learn how. And so I came at most problems in life as you go through with sort of intrinsic courage. And that was born of confidence that my mom helped to instill in me from an early age, just from how she was exposing us and helping us to see things and challenge things in a productive and safe space. So that was a big factor. My parents divorced when I was around 10 or 12, something like that. And so then my dad moved to Washington, D.C. He's now remarried and lives in D.C. today. And my mom raised us through. And so she was a teacher and then a principal and then an administrator. But those types of roles, they're time intensive, but they don't pay such that you're like living in a lot of luxury, when you're raising two kids. So I would characterize my upbringing through middle school and high school as, if you will, sort of uh, lower middle class type of environment. We always had food and clothes, and there was never any, like fundamental lack. I never had. I'm not a hard luck story at all. None of that. But um, as far as like at 16, I didn't have a car. For some friends and classmates, they might have a car, a little, Jeep Cherokee, or driving down the street. I had none of that. I was taking a bus, right? So, um, and I worked part-time jobs in high school, and so there was this aspect of feeling like a little bit left out. And how kids are materialistic in middle school and high school. What kind of shoes do you have? What kind of clothes you have, and all that. So I definitely internalized some of that as well. The in crowd wasn't in it, right? um, so I think as I went through high school, a lot of that sort of the power of academic proficiency and strength, a lot of that waned, but the capability didn't. You know, my sister was more focused, and so she didn't get distracted as much through high school. But I did some, you know, sports, basketball, video games, whatever have you. Um, but I still was able to do very well on standardized tests. And I liked chemistry and math. I just thought that was interesting. And so I took AP classes kind of for fun, got a C or a D in the class, but I did a 4 or 5 on the AP exam. So it was clear, you know, I was a very capable student that was not manifesting that in my work habits. And I was fortunate because of my standardized test scores and because of some of the correction factors that are applied if you go to a magnet school and you're taking AP courses and so forth. My GPA and test scores still qualified me for a very nice scholarship at Florida A&M. President Frederick Humphreys, then at the time, um, you know, met with me personally and said, if you major in chemical engineering, this uh, this company I've never heard of called 3M is going to fund a scholarship. So I took a scholarship and internship package with FAMU right on the spot during that conversation, and so that's how I went from Philadelphia to Tallahassee. And I made up my mind, you know, I was really going to change the way I'd been functioning as a student. If I wasn't going to do well, it wasn't going to be because I didn't try. And so I recognized I had a tremendous opportunity in front of me, and I made the most of it. And so I went down to college and I had very high grades. You know, I think it was like 3.95 GPA or something like that in Chemie, and earned a National Science Foundation fellowship, and was a recruited student into grad school. So things started to turn around from there academically. And then yeah, you know, I went to 3M after that.
Yeah, no, that's way cool. I mean, honestly, I think one of the two of the things that stick out for me is that the fact that you had that foundation that everything was figure outable
Mm-hmm.
younger. And that's something that honestly came to me in college, in engineering, because stuff was so hard. And then,
Mm.
you just have to, I finally reached the point where I was like, wait a minute, because when I go in class, he's gonna figure it out. So obviously it's figure outable. So the
Right,
fact
right,
that
right.
yeah, like that's something that you already knew and you had that, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, also another thing that sticks out for me is how you were so you knew the stuff, you knew your stuff, it just didn't show on, maybe grades, but on the AP test it showed. So we're talented. It shows how like sometimes talent can slip away. What if you didn't pursue it any further just because in your grades it didn't work.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, I was very fortunate to have people kind of look towards me and give me a chance. Not everybody has that. That there was some redemptive aspect of the way that I went through college and the way that I came into graduate school and being able to finish what 9 years of secondary education, undergraduate, and then doctoral program, not just with no debt, but actually making money in the process through your fellowship funding, um, and internships, which are paid. I and I can't take credit for that, right? I mean, somebody had to, like, there were people that had to arrange for there to be those opportunities for a student, and we're seeing very gratifying. We're seeing more of that happening now after a couple of decades where that sort of funding and support had dried up quite a bit. So and it was transformative for me, no question. I mean, like you mentioned, I have 4 kids. I'm married. That kind of stuff doesn't. I'm active in the community. I serve in boards. That kind of stuff doesn't happen if you're not functioning from a position of influence and visibility and impact. And it was enabled through education. Yeah,
Mm.
so.
Yeah, which is
So,
such a common thing for well, we'll go on to the episode, but that's I was gonna say like kind of one of the motivators for this podcast was the fact that that is almost a dream so to a lot of us when we enter colleges that we could be in your shoes, you know, we could live a life,
mm,
you know, that you live, you know, living in your passion, and it's kind of like this common thread of what you were interested in and how you were actually able to make it, you know,
mm,
profitable doing
mhm,
something
mhm.
that interested you. So I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
I do want to shift a little bit to the incubate
Sure.
greatness section, where we just kind of speak about how you started out. You know, now that you FAMU, you did your internships at 3M, and you know you're still with 3M. So
Hmm.
I want to know about how was that process, even in college? How did they sell you on grad school? Because a lot of us, especially engineering curriculum, kind of want to peace out for some time before you get back into the books.
Sure.
How was that journey for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that's a discussion in itself around your motives and your values and what your sort of mission is and purpose. I knew I was going to grad school before I set foot on FAMU's campus. I was already resolved. I had the conversation with my mom. I remember about um, how well I was going to be prepared for grad school going into Florida A&M, which she didn't know anything about. As an HBCU, my sister, would go on to MIT. We're in the Northeast, right? So it's like all these schools around. The schools in land grant institution in the Southeast. She just didn't know about it, and so yeah, I was trying to sell her. I was like, look, so went and pulled out data, but the data was really around the matriculation of undergrads from FAMU into grad school. And I just showed her the data. I was like, look, I see a couple students have gone on to big name departments. And she was like, well, it's only a few. And I was like, if a few did it, I'm doing it. So it
Hmm.
was, there was no question in my mind about where I was headed. And that was because I, by that time, had a strong conviction that this is what I was going to do. And I think, regardless whether it's grad school or whatever, um, life has enough challenges embedded. It is worth having that. If you don't, then that's where you get back to the meditation, prayer, or whatever. Think about like you exist for a reason. Why? It's not it's not for superfluous, temporary stuff. Like so, um, what are you for, and then what's the path to getting that, and then you do it and you dedicate to it. So that was the mindset around undergrad to grad school. There was never any doubt about that part. um, and
Which
then I'm sorry.
I just wanted to ask. So it was just a matter of you wanted to, I guess, reach a height in your educational journey, or was it like you felt that if you went to grad school, you'd have better opportunities career wise?
Sure. So the motive around graduate school at the beginning was in maybe not the most healthy, but it was around proving capability. Like I did it, I can do that. And there was this challenge that I had in my mind. I didn't actually know why it was a benefit. It was more like I had already set the goal, the target was here. Whether or not that's the right target wasn't really as much a consideration. And that's always a fair question. Like, what should your target be? Should it be, go through school, work a couple years, go for an MBA or a JD, or work as a professional engineer? All of those are good. I had pre decided that I was going to go and get a PhD, and I was very committed to that, to being prepared for that. And this notion of academic and professional excellence, like I tried playing, football, basketball. I was not going to be a pro athlete. So I knew that was not going to be my trajectory early on, right? So as much as I might like that stuff, I knew that wasn't going to be me. So what is it going to be, and are you going to be good at it, right? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to be a scientist, and I'm going to be good at that. So that was, and scientists, if you're going to be cutting edge, then you want to get like well trained and you get prepared in undergrad. But you refine, you increase your capability in graduate school. And that I had that part right in understanding.
And that was just from individual, or I should say independent research, that you were able to kind of form that? Because that's very audacious to say, hey, I'm going to be a scientist.
Yeah, I I had picked up enough, maybe just through interaction, and then I knew what I was good at. I'm a good problem solver, and so I recognized and appreciated that. Come on in, sweetheart. It's okay. Yeah. Uh, Even from just previous experiences into high school, so I had some confidence, and I mentioned about that. Like my mom helped with that a lot with our upbringing. Like I was not scared of any problem. If it's a solvable problem and you give me the information, I felt like I can do it. Give me enough time, I can solve any problem. So, I wanted to deploy that capability in the scientific field. And I like math and chemistry. So the rest of it kind of fell into place. And then when I heard about a scholarship for chemical engineering, FAMU, done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you were interning with 3M this whole, like throughout your whole undergrad and graduate time, or were you able to kind of date other companies?
No, so I didn't ever. So I interned at 3M continuously through undergrad, not in graduate school. I just worked straight through grad. I did several internships while I was an undergrad student, though, and that's changed now. You don't normally see people after early, freshman or sophomore years doing internships because you don't really know enough. So they usually have you wait until your junior year, and then you can do other things in your earlier summers. But yeah, so I only interned at 3M. I didn't. I interned in multiple places. So Austin, Texas, Columbia, Missouri, as well as in St. Paul, manufacturing, laboratory, different divisions, different kinds of products in chemistry. So I had a fairly broad set of exposures even before finishing my PhD, and that helped me a lot in my grad school.
Mhm. And you say you worked straight through grad school, so you
Yep.
worked at 3M.
Yes. No, no, no. When I mean, I just meant I was a full-time student from start to finish at University of Minnesota. So I didn't do any. You don't really take jobs. That's changing some now. Many students are coming, especially international students. They haven't really had a chance to do any industrial exposure. So by the time they've gone academic training all the way through undergrad in another country, maybe, and then come here and do grad school, and then they're trying to get a job, it's hard if they haven't really set foot in an industrial space at all. So there is a little bit more appetite to try to give some opportunities there. But at the time, it was pretty common to just stay a student and work full time as a student, working on your thesis research and helping to publish papers, and then when you're finished doing that, you write your thesis and move on.
Mhm. So then your launch from grad school into corporate, your official launch where you become a full-time professional, how was that? Were you prepared? Did you have your eye on some positions, and had you already kind of charted what you wanted your trajectory to be as you had done before you
Mm.
stepped foot in FAMU? How was that process?
Yeah, so it was interesting. The economy had changed some. So when I was finishing undergrad, if you had a 3.0 GPA and an engineering degree, you would have 3 or 4 offers from lots of different companies. It was a very uh, a favorable time to go and get a job. And so I thought it was going to be like that when I finished graduate school, but it was not. At the time, there wasn't much in the way of hiring. And actually, even though I had interned at 3M and I had done all of this work, they had funded my college and supported my grad research a little bit. I thought I was just going to wave a hand and say, "Okay, I'm ready to start working now." But I had to actually knock on a few doors, which was eyebrow raising at least. But I did after knocking around, and I sent a couple of notes. And I was like, look, you supported me here and now I'm ready to work. Do you really want me to go find another job, another company? So, and the answer is no. They just, it took a little time. So anyway, I had 2 offers. I took one of those 2 offers from 3M. And I did actually interview because of this exchange. I did interview at a few other companies. I did have a couple of other uh, job offers. One was actually back in Philly, which was a little tempting because it's hometown and all that. But once the offer did come through from 3M, I took that. The other thing was that um, uh, while I was in graduate school, maybe 3 years in, 3.5 years in, I met my wife here, who had come to work at 3M. So she was a 3M employee. We didn't meet at 3M. We met at a church here, and so anyway, we were going to get married, and so we got married right when I was finishing my degree, right before I started working. But during that time, we knew we were going to get married, and me taking a job at another company was not that attractive because then she would have to leave. So I was really trying to do what I could to get a job at 3M. So I was happy that worked out. And so then, I come into 3M, and I hired into what's called the consumer business. You mentioned in the intro that 3M makes industrial and healthcare and consumer products. And so I hired into the space that it does command adhesive and post-it notes and magic tape and filtrete filters, and that space where you buy products in mass retailers such as Target or Walmart or so forth. And the specific area that I was working in was not tech forward, if you will. Like in my thesis research, I was doing a lot of sort of um, uh, intensive synthesis or characterization with expensive big equipment and cutting edge for polymer science. That's what you're supposed to do if you're doing research. And so when I came to 3M, the area that I was working in was a little bit more of a mature business where it's, for lack of a better description now, sort of in more of a harvest mode where big business, profitable, not growing as much. And so they're trying to do a lot to get cash out of that business rather than invest a lot of people, a lot of instrumentation and tech to grow. And so I'm hired into that space, and for a couple of years, I kind of toiled in what I thought were less attractive, less impactful, and from a business perspective, dubious projects. And so I wondered, like, did I do this right? Did I go to the right spot? Should I try to look around the other company or rest of the company and see what other, because there are spaces at 3M like that where it is cutting edge and tech forward. So I was like, well, maybe I should go and try to get into one of those. And so, I started to look around before I had really done anything, right? I had dabbled and tried to work on some programs. I would, you get assignments, they ask you to do X, Y, and Z, but if X, Y, and Z isn't going to really be that impactful in the market, eventually those programs will get paused or killed or whatever. And so I started to look around internally, and my manager's manager, the lab head or tech director, she heard about that, and so she confronted me in a very positive way, and she gave me one of the teaching moments of my career. She talked about, she exchanged with me about what I was doing, and I shared a little bit about why and like why I was concerned. I was working on stuff that wasn't very clear as far as impact. And she said, you're a PhD. We hired you less to evaluate or look for opportunities, but to create and propose and catalyze opportunities for us. You haven't done that, right? So I want to challenge you to understand our business well enough. We're a big business and we have big competitors. Understand our business well enough, and you help us see what we should do to grow, right? And that was a complete transformation in the way I thought about my responsibility as a resource for shareholders to create a return on investment. I was still coming at it like a student almost, right? What's my assignment today? Do I get a good grade on this assignment? And that's very different than a growth catalyst and a leader, where the discussion is really around what's right to do, where can we win, what models do we need to employ, what resources and proposals and business platforms can we create, and how do we know our customers well. Um, I did. I went ahead and tried to do that, and successfully, we created a line of consumer adhesives that we, scaled up and sold in the mass market. And that turned into my first supervisory role, and then I moved on to a number of different roles from there.
Wow. Awesome story.
Yeah.
First, how did you go about even I guess so when you started, did you have a team at all, or it was just you alone, or were there other people in the same role as you? Did you have like a class of new
Hmm.
you know, folks? How did
Yeah.
that go?
Fair question. So 3M has several thousand technical professionals right here in St. Paul, and considerably more if you think about around the world. In the U.S., our lab centers then and now are St. Paul and Austin. So, and of course, not everybody works in the same areas. There's all different kinds of portfolios and divisions, and there's a central laboratory. And so as you hire into 3M, you become a member of that broader technical community. And one of our distinctions as a company is that we work really hard to have a culture where the technical community, doesn't matter where you work, you have a sort of a code that you help one another solving problems, sharing ideas. If you call up an expert in adhesives or abrasives or wound therapy, they will take time to share what they know. That's how we're supposed to work with one another. And if you don't do that, word spreads really fast, right? So everybody understands that that's how we work. And so, um, so to answer your question, in my work group, there were maybe 7 or 8 researchers that reported to the same manager, and they would work on any number of different product development or commercialization or cost reduction types of technical initiatives specific to a given portfolio. But more broadly than that, we are intrinsically sort of tied to that community of thousands, and it's arranged into different interest groups in a technical forum where people might think about nanotechnology or data science or adhesives, polymers, and specialty processing or so forth. And so that's how we get our individual projects done. We might look with work with the person down the hall or in the cubicle next to us and say, hey, I'm working on X, Y, or Z. What do you think? But we also actively and are encouraged to tap into that broader network of technical leaders around the company. It doesn't matter which area they're in. You kind of take the time to understand your inquiry, your problem, and then have a clear statement so that people are efficient when they help. But then you go out and make sure everybody's aware of how they can contribute.
Yeah. Um, because I'm interested to know how you were able to stand apart from the others, from other folks, to then grant yourself, the supervisory role after projects where you stepped up and raised
Sure.
your hand.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a very important topic, and a good one to raise. Um, I was about to, had I continued blindly on the path that I was going to go on my own, where I started looking around the company, and I probably would have been successful in having somebody hire me to take me on as a researcher in another group. And at the time, it would have seemed like a good move because I'm going into something that's trendy. At that time, multi-layer optical film was just taking off. The component of screens that go into digital devices all around the world. That was the sexy area to be in the company. And so had I done that, I would have probably certainly not be where I am now, but I would have undermined my career quite a bit. And the reason is that the transition that you just talked about, whether you stay technical or stay as an individual contributor, I guess I should say, not everybody's going to be in a technical field, right? Or move into some sort of a supervisory manager role. Sponsorship in large enterprises is alpha to omega, A to Z, the important thing and mechanism for that. And you don't select sponsors, you don't invite sponsors, you don't you can ask somebody to mentor you. You can't get somebody to sponsor you. They choose to do that. It's like almost like venture capitalists. They choose to put their money wherever they feel like it. And sponsors do the same thing. They select and empower and elevate, accelerate whomever they see fit, and they do it for lots of different reasons, but generally to enhance their legacy, and then also to enhance the performance of the company. And so, since it's so critical, right, and since that part is invisible to you, your best opportunity, if you're desiring to sort of progress within a large company and work there for a while, is to do the kinds of things that attract sponsors. And that is the opposite of moving around by your own volition because you think something down the street is neat. Anybody can do that. It's a lot more, I don't know, challenging and important to create and to be seen as a creator of opportunities in any sort of difficult business setting. Um, and so if you're able to go into those places where maybe not everybody is crowding and then come out with cash opportunity, a narrative around business development, then you stand out like a sore thumb, and you create an economic incentive for the company to progress you and to give you more span of scope or influence or visibility, promotions, whatever have you. Um, and I mean, a part of it is great because it's like, hey, we're taking Taylor and we're making her this, and everybody can clap and celebrate. But a part of it is mercenary. It's like, all right, because Taylor is now in that spot, she's about to do X, Y, and Z, and that's what we need, right? So you're sort of showing that you can play bigger than where you are, and when you show that, um, then the sponsorship part happens a lot more naturally and a lot more quickly than you might appreciate. The flip side is also true. um, by by failing to exhibit a selflessness and a servant leadership mindset, willing to kind of stay in place and produce and work your trade and grow the harvest um, for a period of time until you're tapped on the shoulder, you also can drive sponsors away, and they're pretty hard to reattract.
Mm, that's a good one. Pretty hard to reattract. Um, so your first role, your first, I guess, promotion, so to speak, the first time you were granted additional responsibility, were you now like, okay, I can see clearly now, I see this path to more leadership, I see where I can go? Or were you just like, okay, I've been promoted, I have more responsibility, great, let's just see where it takes me? Like, did you sit down once you're promoted and then write out a game plan and how you could get to, perhaps where you are now? Or were you just like,
Yeah,
okay, I'm here and we'll just see where this goes?
yeah. It might sound a lot more laissez-faire than what many might like, but it's very much the second thing. I have actually resisted the notion of career mapping, career pathing, um, because largely because of what I just mentioned around sponsorship. The sponsor knows all the jobs that might exist. I don't. Right. The job that I'm in right now, I have no predecessor. It was created, and then I was the first person put into it.
Wow.
I couldn't have said I want to do X because X didn't exist. Um, and so, and my previous job was similar. I did have a predecessor, but I wasn't. I had no conception that I was going to do my previous job before this one. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to be in my lab leader role in the safety business, I don't know, for a few years and kind of keep working at it. And I'm content. I'm happy. I can see how I can contribute. I'm passionate. I love my team. And and so yeah, to answer your question, it's not I'll just kind of sit and this will be how it is for a while. I am very much on mission. But it's the mission is not about um, my career path. That part I spend almost no time thinking about. Now in my current role, I might think about it a little bit, but not very much. And it's mostly in the context of, am I continuing to grow? What do I need to keep learning and building to stay and keep growing in relevance, right? Because in senior leadership roles, they're intrinsically they're fewer, right? And so, and the difference between one role and another can be quite significant. So in order to be um, mobile and portable, there you have to be a little deliberate about what things you learn, right? Because your time is limited, your decisions really matter as far as what investments you make. So it's in that spirit of like measure twice, cut once that I think about, okay, where am I trying to go?
Yeah, wow. Those are some good bars you just dropped there. I hope everyone got their jewelry boxes and picked up jewels, because I definitely was. That was great, about how could you know? You're just
Yeah,
that's you, and living out, your
yeah,
optimal self brought
yeah,
you to a higher level. So that's a pretty cool story.
yeah, yeah, it's true.
Yeah, yeah. So on that note a little bit, and
Mhm.
well, yeah, we'll stay on this note really quickly. A
Sure.
section about how you were able to differentiate yourself. I want to know a little bit about your characteristics, your persona in the workplace. Are there things that are identifiable by, Cordell? Like, oh my gosh, yeah, Cordell always comes in and he always says good morning, always saying hi, or he always has his
Yeah.
coffee to creams. Like, what are some of the things that are regimen for you in the workplace
Hmm.
that are identifiable?
Sure. No, I appreciate that. Um, so a f- there are a few things that I'll at least wave at. From the technical perspective, um, I have been known to be, and I'm not in a lab anymore, right? So like the scientist piece, it's only indirectly that I deploy that on a daily basis now. I still need to be technical and aware, but it's mostly ideas and connections and networks and so forth. Um, but the ability to think in the abstract about objective content and to create and to produce and influence based on that. And again, the problem solving aspect, I'm recognized as a solution provider. Solution providers are valuable because companies have lots of problems, right? So so that's one thing. Uh, I deliberately and talk about this. I mean, people might say I might overdo the servant leadership bit, but I'm really focused on subordinating personal interest for the sake of community, company, society, and then in the process of doing that, the the blowback is favorable, right? there, there's compensation there, there's recognition, but in intending to pull a lever so that you create a favorable benefit for others, that's attractive, right? People will deal with you in good faith because they perceive correctly that you're only trying to help. If you're not trying to like figure out how you can get a little, like a millimeter more of the turf and take just a little bit more from somebody else, they don't want to deal with. They deal with that all the time, right? So instead, it's like, hey, I'm trying to give as much as you need while still being able to take care of my responsibilities. I'm on your team. We're working on this together. They want team members like that. And so you end up getting pulled into stuff and accelerated and all that. I'm, as you noticed, right, African American men. So coming to the party with that diverse background, and not in the sense of like quota affirmative action part, although no question, uh, the intention to diversify and increase representation has been a theme from my high school years on, right? I mean, some of the scholarship programs, all of that was overtly around equity and social justice and representation. Um, but beyond that, like the perspective of the African American consumer and scientist employee, in order for us to have a stable society, like it has to be an inclusive society. And so in the marketplace of ideas, you need to make sure that Asian American and Caucasian and male, female, the whole range of perspectives is represented. And so I bring that where, as you're probably well aware, Black folks are underrepresented in the sciences and engineering in many cases. So that's another distinction, right? Um, I'm hands-on, even as a manager. Like I'm not going to try to do my direct reports or the scientists' work, but I actually try to get deep into the details just for the sake of understanding, so I can lead whatever the initiative is more effectively. And so, for example, right now I'm taking a machine learning course through one of uh, the researchers here who's teaching. He serves as an adjunct professor as well, so he's teaching a machine learning course with Python, and so we're all going on this journey together. And I perceived that there was a need for, he's doing theory and math and then examples, but there is no coding. So I said, oh, I'll fund the development of parallel a set of documents around coding in Python, exemplifying some of the case studies that he's dealing with commented code in Python that people can actually work with, right? So it took both having the hands-on detail, but then also the leadership resource access. I don't have to go and ask for approval. I can just fund that, right? So those two things, are great to have, and I try to be an asset to the company that way. And so, I think that's a part of my brand.
Yeah. And that actually also transitions us to, another section about making it, do you feel that you've made it, and, you being able to have access, like you said, to push some things through are benefits of the position you're in now. Are there additional benefits? What are some of the things that you've been able to have access to that maybe you didn't even imagine you'd be able to experience? I know you had mentioned before traveling was something you've been able to do, as 3M's worldwide corporation. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, curious to know.
Yeah, I mean, you hit, I would say, on the biggest one. Um, on a recording, I'm not going to talk too much about like the benefit of pay, right?
Oh no.
But but I mean, certainly, I mean, again, we have four kids, right? Four kids turn into four adults. So leadership roles certainly come with those sorts of benefits. That's great. We're honored and blessed to have that type of experience. But as far as just personal
Mhm.
journey, the travel has been transformative for me. I grew up in Philadelphia. I don't think I had gone south of. I went to North Carolina for a funeral once when I was maybe 10 or 11, and besides that, hadn't gone out of Philly to New York area
Mhm.
maybe ever, right? At Disney World one time, right? So very poorly traveled on a relative basis, and many people like that, right? It's not. I wasn't uncommon. Didn't know any better, and so from that into in the last 10 years, these with moving into global roles where you have global influence or now global formal assignments, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Australia, Thailand, China, Korea, Japan, a long Germany, UK. I mean, it's a long list. India, long list of countries that you get a chance to travel to, and that's, when you get to see the world from that perspective, and you think about, I mean, for me, like, you grow up in the U.S., and as a Black American, how intrinsically, like, ethnicity and the narrative of the country plays into so many dynamics. I mean, the George Floyd trial is happening right now. It's, so all that stuff is very impactful in our immediate surroundings. Um, but you go to some other countries where it's, different background. I mean, like, being Black or being a minority in India or China, there isn't. They have other things that they think about, but it's not that, right? Um, so you get these cultural influences and perspectives, that you get to bring into your family, bring into your thinking, bring into your business, and so that's been good. Um, the other, I'd mentioned, you talked about serving in the community. Uh, this it's a nice pair. Lead in the company, so you get qualified to serve on boards for nonprofits. They want you to come and wield your influence to help bring resources in and all that. But then you learn, you develop leadership acumen through your board service that you get to bring back into work. And so, I serve as a treasurer for an organization that has revenues in the tens of millions of dollars, right? So it's a scale organization, and lots of employees, and serves 40,000 patients. So I've appreciated getting that exposure and the satisfaction from feeling like you have a small touch on impacting the lives of a good number of people. It makes a difference.
Yeah. And question on that, how are you able to just figure it out? Because, you mentioned before you came from, pretty straightforward beginnings in your upbringing. Uh how as you were ascending in this corporate ladder, were you able to get all your ducks in a row? Were you able to know how to reach for boards, or give back at scale, or what have you, and influence your community, and
Mm.
also keep it together at work? How did it all work together for you, and did you end up getting additional mentors, or were people kind of assigned to you, so to speak? You know how a sponsor would see you, maybe a sponsor made themselves visible to you and then helped you out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe a little bit of all of the above. I've been helped by a ton of people. Some people take an interest in me and say, "Hey, I want to help here." I've been recommended, "Hey, go and seek out this person." So I'll go and do that. Um, but I would say this: the the biggest theme is really around values. I'm not perfect. I've made some big mistakes through my life, and so uh, in the context of trying to do the right thing, trying to serve. I mean, all of us are going to have those mess ups. You have some roles that don't work out, or you have challenges at home or whatever. Um, that that's part of the journey. I like having this background that's sort of chaotic. My son is back there doing some work right now. I mean, that I'm just a man like anybody else, right? With imperfections and limits, and so we need that cloud of support. I didn't just figure it out. I stumbled. I struggled. I but the values as a compass, like, this is the right direction, this is the right thing. All you can do on a given day is the right thing at that time. And sometimes the right thing is thinking about the future. But once you're presented with, this is the right way, this is the wrong way, you know the struggle all of us will have is like orienting towards the right path, offering the very best that you have to your employer, to your family, to your community all the time. And so whether you develop to become a senior leader in a big company or start your own business or continue to work in a relatively, humble job faithfully for decades and contribute in lots of other ways. I mean, it's your story and you have, you own it, be proud of it. Um, but the best way to be proud of it is to make sure that you're living according to your values and note those values are the right values, right? Um, and we see all around us, whether in administration or government or in our community, either when the values are wrong or when the person doesn't stick to their values and might say this is right, but I did that, and the results speak for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a I guess a really a point that I've been interested in because, even just uh entry level into an organization in a role that I'm in, I've already kind of done better than a lot of the grown people, adults in
Mm,
my family. And I'm nowhere near, your stature right now. So it's just, and yet I've been conflicted with lots of things and trying to figure out how to give back properly, how to make sure I'm well financially. I think a lot of us young folks in corporate, Black in corporate, and unfortunately, just the conditions of our country, a lot of us do have beginnings that are not lavish. And
hmm.
so we end up being kind of the highest earning folks in our family. And it's just figuring that out, having that tug of war, that balance of like how to do things right. Like you said, folks will help you. And so that's encouraging to hear.
Yeah,
Because yeah,
yeah.
it is something that I definitely face. And I know like a lot of my peers face it and just trying to
Mhm.
navigate the best way. It's like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, in your inaugural Black Plus Corporate podcast, I'm going to ask you a question,
oh
right?
yes.
Yeah. How do you manage that? Like what's your thought about, because you just laid out a real challenge, in some ways you're like leading in your family, or maybe not you, but others. How do you, what's your thought? How do you take some of that pressure on, and how do you manage it so that you keep growing and that you strike the right balance between allowing people to have responsibility for some of the outcomes of their pursuits, their decisions, and then at the same time giving back and contributing and being a trustworthy partner in your family.
Yeah, I definitely do it through conversation with my friends. I have a lot
Hmm.
of friends. I'm also a Gates Millennium Scholar, so
Okay.
a lot of my thanks a lot of my peers from that they're literally like family to me, and we came from a lot of the same beginnings, and they work at companies like mine, and so they really give me advice and tips, and I'm able to take some here and there, put them together for how I move with my family. And then also reading books. I'm an Audible person, so I
Okay.
love to read, to listen to my books, and it just realize that I only get one life. And so, being mindful
Hmm.
of family, but also remaining true to me and, making sure I get the most out of this life. Because
Hmm.
I'll be
Hmm.
the only one at the end of the day, unfortunately, in that casket. So it's
Yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah, so that's kind of how
yeah.
I balance it. But yes, it's always so cool to me to see how other Black executives are there. You guys, in my mind, you all made it. So it's like, wow, how do they just, it all came together. They hold these cool roles, they do this stuff with their community, it's great family. But like you said, you're still human, you're a real person. That's just, encouraging to hear. So just wanted to touch on that.
Hmm.
And I guess that's a good segue into legacy.
I appreciate it. Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah,
mhm.
I
No,
was
no, please. I'll wait. Go ahead.
sorry, I just snorted on the on the podcast. But I was gonna say that's a good segue. Yeah, I snort when I laugh, so that one I let that one out, but didn't mean to.
The
Um,
charming snort.
I wanted to know about your legacy and what you're hopeful about leaving. I mean, here
Hmm.
and also advice. I mean, we could get into other stuff. I feel like we could talk for a whole nother episode because of course there's other questions like
Absolutely. Invite
yeah.
me back. It's your show. You decide. So,
They deal with, like other Black professionals in the workplace wanting help and advice. Maybe they're not all the way qualified, but they're asking you to help them get on. How does
hmm
that, all of that stuff, managing up those things. And I think you've touched on a lot of things. Um, but
Sure, sure.
yeah, I know we could go a whole other direction.
Yeah,
Um,
those are interesting topics. Yeah, so like I said, I'll wait for you to let me know when and if you want to talk about all that stuff. That's good. Um, Legacy. I hope I'm still writing it, um, and while I am no longer in the early stages of my career for sure, I still feel like there's a lot of gas in the tank, and so there's a lot that I aspire to do, and so societal impact has been sort of the general direction, like community and societal can be big scale world country, can be within the neighborhood. It can be with a focus on equity and social justice. I'm certainly very well aware of the impact that disparities have had in the United States and even around the world. I mean, some very tough stories in other countries as well. And so you know, guided largely, through my faith in God and just this notion that to whom much is given, much is expected, and if you're a recipient of gifts or abilities or resources, once you have enough money, once you have enough food, you can only wear so many clothes at one time. Once you have enough clothes, you only can wear two shoes at a time, right? And so there's this point of enough. And if you have more than enough, then you get some discretion, right? You have some choices to make. It's wonderful. It's an honor to make those choices. But to me, it's folly to make those choices to like just focus on how many more shoes I can acquire, right? That's that's not doing anybody any good. So instead, it's like, how can we get as many shoes on feet as possible? Is a different question. So that's kind of thinking about like wealth equity, healthcare equity, the difficult situation that we face with criminalization and disproportionate law enforcement interactions, very prominent on display. So how do I make a difference in the public space? And so there's more opportunity there than there's time. So I have to think about that.
yes. Yeah. No, that was that was a great way of putting it. I actually really enjoyed that. You know, this point of enough,
hmm
I think, is really good to kind of meditate on. So I appreciate you mentioning that. I think,
mm
um, with all your years now and how you've climbed the corporate ladder at 3M, at this same company, and there are only, well, I shouldn't say there are only, but I'm sure there are more folks that stay on one company. But I know folks in my generation, we like to bounce around. Um, and switch it up. What kind of advice would you give to people who, can't even fathom spending so many years at one company to how to reinvent and make it new every
Yeah,
day?
yeah. I would love to spend a lot of time on that, um, because there's no one right answer for sure, but there are right and wrong decisions given the situation, and it really gets back to why. Why are you moving? Why are you staying? Right? If you're if you're growing, economically productive, if you're relevant to your employer and the your employer is relevant to society, if it's relevant to your values, if it aligns to your values, then your staying and being productive is creating quite a bit of impact, right? So there's a switching cost. I guess that might be the best way to help frame that discussion is if you're going to switch and bounce around, you have to appreciate there is a switching cost. And it doesn't mean you can't pay it. It goes beyond financial, it's relational, it's your political capital, it's your reputation, all those things. Many people are moving around, and I'm not knocking it at all. Um, there's it's really around your motives and being fairly uh, strategic and intellectually honest about why, like what's making you do it. Is it boredom? Do you feel like the grass is greener on the other side? Do you feel like you can uh, make more money that way? What's really driving you? And you lay that out on the table and then align it with your values and what you believe your calling and reason for existing is, and that helps you to make the decision.
Yeah, that's good. I really like that piece. Um, and to be respectful of time, I just want to uh, give you the space to kind of wrap it up in a bow, or any like lasting words or advice that you give young
Sure.
professionals, because I know that's definitely a reason why I wanted this platform to or this podcast to exist, is to really like so we can hear from you all, learn from you all. So any advice, lasting words. Now, in the next few minutes of the podcast, the sound becomes a bit distorted, so I do want to apologize. I began experiencing some connection issues, but if you just hang on, it'll all come together. Thanks so much for listening so far, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode.
Okay. So I guess I'll first start with a thank you and an appreciation of your vision here in creating this space. I wish if there's any way that I can be helpful to you, I want to do that because I think this is a great idea, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. Uh, as far as just general advice, now is a tremendous opportunity. Um, you're at the beginning of a sort of an economic cycle. We're coming out of COVID. There's a flood of capital coming into the economy. We'll have to figure out what that means later on as far as debt and taxes and so forth. But you get to lead, right? Your decisions are actually going to drive that outcome, right? So yeah, that there's some challenges, but who's going to meet those? It's you, right? So um, what role do competitive and increasing your challenges due to this podcast? If you listen this long, you're intellectually curious, which is great. And I just want to encourage you, to keep building on that and keep striving and know that you have a lot of support, a lot of potential, and the world needs what you have to offer. So I just thank you for the time.
Thank you. I know on my end, my connection was a little unstable, but we were able to hear everything. But sorry about that. Hopefully, it comes out better. Um, but to listeners, sorry about that.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
it's fine. I got you.
Yeah,
And no problem, Taylor. And I appreciate you having me. It was an honor, and I'll look forward to seeing where you and this project goes. It's really nice.
yeah, I'm excited too. I picked up several jewels. Like I said, you've been definitely dropping a lot of good words throughout this entire episode. So it was definitely an hour well spent. And as you said, if
Mm.
if you've listened this long, you are intellectually curious, and that also means that you were definitely engaged because you're engaging.
Hmm.
And do people call you Dr. Hardy or is it no?
Oh, no, not. I mean, at 3M, there's a lot of PhDs, so we don't do the Dr. Hardy. Cordell is fine. That's yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. All right.
yeah.
Well, thank you so very much. As I said, I'm really grateful that you were able to fit me in, and we're able to schedule this. So I
My
appreciate it.
honor. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a good one.